In 1953, a woman in Gary, Indiana, cashed her husband's Friday paycheck at the mill gate. After rent, after coal, after shoes for the youngest two, she had $3.40 left. 6 people to feed, 7 days until the next check arrived. She walked into the kitchen and did not come out until dinner was on the table. She fed that family on less than $4 a week for over 2 decades. Not one evening meal was ever skipped. Not one. That dinner is on this list. Number 19 cost less than 30 cents and fed 6 people after a full shift at the plant. Number 8 was the one factory wives made on the nights their husbands came home and could not find the word. Number 2 is on a restaurant menu in Brooklyn right now for $22 a plate. These 25 dinners were built for one purpose: survival. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count them down. Number 25. Cornmeal mush with bacon drippings. On the last Friday of the month, when the pantry shelf held almost nothing, she cooked the cornmeal slow in salted water, stirring until it thickened, then poured the morning's bacon drippings over the top while it was still hot. It was not breakfast, it was dinner, and at that table, nobody said a word against it. Number 24. Potato and onion hash. 2 potatoes, 1 onion, whatever fat remained in the skillet. She pressed them flat against the iron and let the bottom brown hard before she turned it. In mill kitchens from Pittsburgh to Youngstown, this was a weeknight dinner. Restaurants today call it rustic hash and charge $14 for it. Number 23. Macaroni and tomatoes. 1 box of dry macaroni, 1 can of crushed tomatoes, a pinch of salt. She boiled it all together until the pasta absorbed the liquid and the whole pot turned the color of rust. It fed everyone at that table. The children thought it was spaghetti. Their mothers let them think that. Number 22. Navy bean soup with ham hock. She put it on the burner before her husband left for the morning shift and did not touch it again for 8 hours. The hock gave the broth its depth. The beans gave the meal its weight. Dinner was already done before the shift whistle blew. 1 pot, 6 people, 1 long day. Number 21. Fried salt, pork and gravy on bread. She sliced the salt pork thin, fried it in its own fat until the edges curled, then scraped every drop of drippings into a thin flour gravy and poured it over white bread. This was not poverty food. This was a factory worker's fuel, and it kept men on their feet through 12-hour shifts. Number 20. Egg noodles with butter and black pepper. 3 ingredients, 12 minutes. She boiled the noodles, drained them fast, and tossed in the last of the butter while the pot was still hot. Children who grew up in those kitchens still remember the exact smell of butter just beginning to brown. They always will. Number 19. Cabbage and potatoes, boiled and salted. The immigrant families who built the steel mills of western Pennsylvania brought this meal with them across the Atlantic. They boiled the cabbage soft, pressed it together with the potatoes, and salted it until it tasted like home. Nutritionists now recognize it as one of the most efficient meals a working body can eat. Stop the countdown for a moment. In the years after the Second World War, the food industry discovered television, and they used it with purpose. They ran advertisements telling American women that cooking from scratch was old-fashioned, that real modern families ate from cans, from boxes, from pre-packaged pouches. The message was simple, and it was deliberate. What your grandmother made was inferior. What came from a factory was progress. The women who had kept their families fed through mill work and shift work, who had put dinner on that table 6 nights a week on a budget most people today could not imagine, were told the knowledge they carried in their hands was not worth passing down. They were not cooking cheap, they were cooking smart. The difference was a few $1 million in advertising and 30 years of primetime television. Number 18. Bean and bread soup. When the bread had gone too hard to eat and the week had stretched too thin, she tore it into rough chunks and dropped it into a pot with cooked beans and whatever broth remained from the day before. She simmered it until the bread dissolved and the whole thing thickened on its own. Restaurants discovered it years later, gave it an Italian name, and charged $18 a bowl. Number 17. Spam and potato casserole. Spam had been in American pantries since 1937, and factory families never quite let it go. She diced the can into cubes, layered it between sliced potatoes, added a pour of water, and baked it until the top crisped. Children who ate this still remember the exact sound the can made opening. They remember it the way you remember any sound connected to the feeling of being fed. Number 16. Creamed chipped beef on toast. The men who came home from the war brought this one back with them. She learned it from her husband, dried beef simmered in a white flour sauce, poured over toast. It fed soldiers first, then it fed their children. Same recipe, different war. Number 15. Chicken and dumplings from one carcass. One chicken became 3 meals in those kitchens. The carcass went into a pot of salted water. The broth became the base. The scraped meat went back in. The flour dumplings cooked directly in the simmering liquid. Nothing left that pot wasted. The bone itself became the next meal. That was not resourcefulness. That was mastery. Number 14. Stuffed peppers with rice and oats. When the ground beef ran short, she stretched it with cooked rice and rolled oats. Packed the mixture into bell pepper. At the table, it looked like something she had spent the whole afternoon preparing. It looked like Sunday dinner. It was Tuesday. It was $4. Number 13. White bean and kale stew. Before kale had a price tag, factory families in coal towns and mill communities grew it in backyard patches and boiled it down with white beans and salt pork. Your grandmother did not call it a superfood. She called it dinner. She was right about it decades before anyone else figured that out. Number 12. One-pot American goulash. Dry macaroni, ground beef, canned tomatoes, onion, salt. She browned the meat, added everything else, and let it cook down until the pasta softened and the whole pot held together. The kids always asked for seconds. The mother always said there was enough. There usually was. Number 11. Potato soup with bacon fat. She boiled the potatoes soft in salted water, broke them roughly into the broth, and stirred in a spoonful of bacon fat until the whole thing went thick and smooth. She made a full pot even years after the children left, and the house went quiet. Old habits do not unknit easily. Number 10. Salted oatmeal for dinner. Not sweet. Salted, sometimes with a soft-cooked egg rested on top, eaten from a bowl at the kitchen table on the nights. When payday was still 2 days out, she set the table properly. Bowls, not pots. Spoons, not hands. Dinner, not shame. Before number 9, stop for a moment. What those women were doing in those kitchens extended well beyond keeping their families fed. Nutritionists now understand that many of the combinations factory wives relied on daily were, by instinct or by necessity, sound. Beans cooked with animal fat increase the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins in ways that modern supplements cannot reliably replicate. Long-simmered bone broths were delivering collagen and minerals that no store-bought product was built to match. The slow-cooked legumes, the rough porridges, the cultured dairy, all of it now falls under what researchers call functional food. She was not cooking poor, she was cooking ahead of her time. She just did not have the language for it. And the food industry, when it arrived in her living room through the television screen, made sure it stayed that way. Number 9. Tomato and bread soup. She tore 2-day-old bread into rough chunks and dropped it into a pot with a can of crushed tomatoes and a cup of water, simmering it low until the bread dissolved and the soup thickened on its own. Modern food writers rediscovered this dish, gave it an Italian name, and put it on menus across the country. Your grandmother called it Tuesday. Number 8. Egg drop soup, Midwest style. On the nights her husband came home from the plant and sat down without a word, she had this broth brought to a gentle simmer, 2 eggs cracked in slow, stirred to thin ribbons. She knew before he sat down what kind of night it had been. The soup was already on. Number 7. Rice and pan gravy. She never threw away what was left in this. Whatever had cooked that week left something behind in the iron pan, and she turned it into a thin gravy with flour and water, and poured it over. The drippings were not the leftovers, they were the point. Number 6. Cornbread and buttermilk. On summer evenings when the kitchen was too hot for the stove, she crumbled leftover cornbread into a tall glass of cold buttermilk and ate it with a spoon. Children who grew up on this remember the sound of the spoon scraping the bottom of the glass. They remember it the way you remember the best parts of being young. Number 5. Bean and ham hock soup, started on Sunday and kept on the stove through Thursday. She bought the bone for almost nothing, added dried beans and enough water to last, and ladled it out night after night until the pot was empty. 1 bone, 4 nights, 6 people. This was not poverty. This was mathematics. Number 4. The everything pot. Every Friday, before the paycheck arrived, she emptied what remained in the pantry. Into a single pot, the half onion, the last of the dried beans, whatever scrap of meat had been set aside, added water and salt, and put it on the stove. She never called it cleaning out the fridge. She called it dinner. It always was. Number 3. Bread and butter with sugar. When the refrigerator held nothing and payday was still a day away, she spread the thinnest scrape of butter across 2 slices of white bread and pressed a pinch of sugar over the top. She cut them in half and set them on the children's plates. The children thought it was a treat. She watched them eat. She did not let them see her face. Number 2. 1 bowl soup. After the children grew up and moved away and the table that used to seat 6 sat mostly empty, she still made the soup. Same pot, same recipe, but she filled only 1 bowl now. She still set the table. Placemat, spoon, napkin folded at the side. Habit is a form of hope. Number 1. The Friday pot. Every week, before the check came, before the pantry was restocked, she stood at that stove and made something from whatever was left. There was no recipe written down for it. There never had been. Every family in every mill town had their own version, and it tasted different in every kitchen, and it was the same meal everywhere. Nobody wrote it down. Nobody had to. It lived in the hands of every woman who ever stood at that stove and decided that tonight, no matter what, her family was going to eat well. These 25 dinners were never about eating cheap. They were about a decision made quietly, every single day, without recognition and without complaint, that the people at that table deserved a hot meal, a set place, and the small dignity of sitting down together. The skill required to stretch almost nothing into something, night after night for decades, was not a small thing. It was a form of love that never got a name. This is my challenge to you this week. Pick one of these meals, make it on a weeknight. Not because you have to, but because you want to understand what it felt like to stand in that kitchen. Sit at the table, not the couch. Eat it slowly. And when you are done, leave a comment and tell me what your grandmother made that nobody else in your family seems to remember. That knowledge belongs to all of us. It always has.